Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining me today for our latest webinar here at Railbookers, Exploring Canada. My name's Sam. I'll be talking you through some of our most popular holidays in Canada. We'll be covering everything from the different rail options that you have, from the overnight sleeper cabins on board Via Rail to some of the luxury options on the Rocky Mountaineer. We'll cover many of the destinations that you'll visit on our holidays, as well as some of the tours, activities and excursions that are included as well, and hopefully give you some inspiration for that next trip away. So just before we jump in to the holidays, for those of you that have joined us before, you'll know that we do spend the first couple of moments just going over a bit about who we are at Railbookers. So if you have seen this before, please do indulge me. But if it is your first time on a Railbookers webinar, it is a good opportunity just to learn a little bit more about who we are, as I say, before we jump into the holidays. So just starting with a slide that gives you an idea as to why perhaps some people use Railbookers, what makes us unique. So top right there, very important, I think, to point out, is we offer maximum flexibility on our trips. That means that everything we do is customizable. It's all tailor-made to suit your needs. Everything that you see on today's webinar, any holidays you see in our brochures, even on our website, they're just ideas of potential itineraries and routes you can take for your holidays, but you don't have to stick to them. We offer any destination, any date for any length of time. We say as long as the train goes there, so do we. So if you don't see something that's exactly to your taste today, don't worry. You can always manipulate and modify these itineraries to try and suit yourselves. We do also book all the way up to 24 months out. So we can book for someone that's looking to travel next Monday to someone that's looking to travel all the way through to September 2023. I think that's quite important, especially when people are looking at larger holidays, perhaps over to North America, as we're looking at today, especially if you're looking to plan something well in advance for a special occasion, perhaps a big birthday maybe that you've got coming up. We're able to start looking into that for you all the way through into 2023. Alternatively, if you're looking to get away as soon as possible, with these restrictions now being lesser than they were before, things are starting to open up, we can send you away for the back end of this year, October, November, December, no problem at all. We also have the largest rail holiday selection in the UK. So again, if you don't see exactly what you like today and you haven't been on our website, please do check it out. We've got hundreds and hundreds of different options for you there. And if you do think that perhaps something is a bit complicated, don't worry, do just give us a call. The rail networks around Europe and North America can look a bit complex at times. So if you're not quite sure where to start, just give us a call. Our expert agents will be more than willing to give you a helping hand. I did touch upon brochures there, so we do have a number of digital brochures that you can download from our website. One of them being our US and Canadian rail holidays, of course, very pertinent to this webinar, but we do have plenty of other options, some a bit closer to home, our UK and Ireland holidays, and we do have a dedicated Scottish holidays brochure as well. We've seen a lot more people looking to stay closer to home and explore Scotland by train this year. And we do have a luxury journeys brochure as well, which will include some of our Rocky Mountaineer holidays, one that we'll see today, and other such trains such as the Orient Express, for instance. We do have offices around the globe, not just in London, but in Sydney, Australia, a couple of offices in the US and one in Canada as well. Really, I like to highlight this because it gives you an idea of the support that you will have from ourselves if you are traveling on one of our holidays. So wherever you are globally, there will be somebody hopefully awake and able to assist. We do have a dedicated customer service, customer support team for you, but pre-travel, on travel and post-travel as well. So it doesn't matter where you are or what time of day. You should always be able to get through to somebody if you have any questions. Of course, we have rail partnerships, with all the main operators across Europe and North America. You see Via Rail there, which we'll be looking at in detail today in Canada, and then Trenitalia, Deutsche Bahn in Germany, Renfe in Spain. It's these partnerships that allow us to book those tickets up to 24 months in advance. If any of you have perhaps taken European rail holidays before, you'll know that most of the tickets for Europe are released 3 to 6 months prior to travel. So if you're looking to book in advance, you have to wait until the tickets are released. These relationships allow us to book further afield and also to make any special requests to the carriers for you. If you want a particular seat, an upper or lower deck, forward facing, we can make those requests, and we can't always guarantee it, but we do have a better chance of getting those for you via our connections in the industry. And finally, and I think it's right that we do still continue to cover this at the moment, how rail operators are maintaining a safe environment. So in Europe and in North America, facial coverings are required in stations and on trains for passengers and staff. If you do have a private sleeper cabin, you do not have to wear the masks in your own private cabin. It's completely up to you. But whilst you're in the main carriages of the train, or if you are just in economy seating, you will have to wear your mask for the duration of the journey. Of course, continued and increased cleaning and sanitation at stations and on board, and contactless ticket control. So the tickets that we send through to you now quite often will be e-tickets. A lot of the tickets that we're provided with now are e-tickets. They're no longer physical tickets. Just to reduce the amount of contact, the risk of spread of disease, of course. So it'll be through email and on applications, much like airline tickets have been over the last decade or so. Most people have an app now and they just scan their ticket as they go through. Rail providers, rail operators are moving that way as well. Okay, so let's take a look at our first holiday. This is the ultimate Canada coast to coast. So we're starting big here. This is an extravaganza that takes you all the way from the East Coast, Halifax through to British Columbia and Vancouver, over on the West Coast. It's a 16-night, 17-day trip. It includes 5 nights on board Via Rail, all in all, and 11 nights in the cities and towns of the Rocky Mountains there that you'll see. So it starts in Halifax. You have 1 night in Halifax. We'll have a look at Halifax in just a moment. And then 1 night on board the Via Rail services. Then it's Quebec City for a night, Montreal for 2 nights, and Toronto for 2 nights. They are all day services, so no overnights on the train there, just economy or business class for those journeys. And we'll look at Quebec, Montreal, and Toronto a bit later on in the webinar. Some of our other packages include those as well. When you're in Toronto, you do have a full day trip out to Niagara Falls, which I'll show you and talk to you a bit about in just a moment. And after your 2 nights in Toronto, it's 3 days on board the Canadian service between Toronto and Jasper. So it's 3 nights, 2 full days. I know 3 nights does sound like quite a long time to spend on the train, and it is. You know, it's a relatively long period of time to spend on the train. I imagine it would be the most amount of time any of us or many of us will have spent on board a train were we to do this particular trip. But it departs Toronto quite late in the evening and arrives into Jasper early in the morning. So it's 2 full days, and it is an absolutely fantastic and very unique experience as you're covering those provinces of Canada, watching the landscapes and the scenery change, either from the comfort of your own cabin or from one of the observation cars. It really is a memorable experience, and for me, the only way to see Canada, it's the best way to spend your time as you're traveling through those provinces. You get all your meals on board, freshly cooked, freshly prepared, very relaxing, lots of communal things to do as well, a bit of wine tasting, perhaps. They have some films that you can watch as well. I will take a more in-depth look at the different cabins, the different sleeping accommodation, and what life's like on board Via Rail closer to the end of the webinar. But I wanted to point out early on that those 3 nights and 2 full days really don't feel like, you know, your normal experience on board a train. It's something completely different and a fantastic way to travel across the country. So after those 3 nights and 2 days, you come into the Rocky Mountains, those last couple of hours as you're traveling through the Rockies into Jasper, an experience like nothing else. And then you're going to have 3 nights in the Rocky Mountain area and Rocky Mountain National Park itself, with 2 nights in Jasper and 1 night in Banff. And we'll take a look at some of the excursions that we include in just a moment. After your time in the Rocky Mountains, it's back on the Via Rail service for 1 further night on board. And then we finish up in Vancouver for 2 nights over on the West Coast. So as I mentioned, you start in Halifax. Halifax, an Atlantic Ocean port over in eastern Canada. They're the provincial capital of Nova Scotia. It's now a kind of major business centre, but very well known for its maritime history. The city itself is the landscape dominated by a hilltop citadel, a star-shaped fort completed in the mid-19th century, and it has lots of really nice, as you can see here, waterfront warehouses known as the historic properties to kind of hark back to Halifax's days as a trading hub. So lots of history to be found in Halifax, and we do offer a couple of tours. The standard tour that we offer in Halifax is just a tour of the city itself, a bit of a general tour, but we do offer a more unique tour out to an area called Peggy's Cove, which is famous for Peggy's Point Lighthouse. You'll get to travel along the shoreline to Peggy's Cove, very unique coastline full of history and culture. And this area has been a paradise for kind of explorers and artists as well. You see a lot of artists out there painting the shoreline and the coast for a couple of 100 years. Really is a little kind of postcard village on the edge of Halifax, right on the rugged shoreline. So we offer a unique tour there as well. So just to mention with our tours and activities, some do come as standard as part of the packages, but we do offer plenty of private and unique experiences as well. So if what you was to see that within one of the holidays didn't particularly strike your fancy and you wanted to ask what else we've got, please just let us know if you're looking for something a bit more unique. And in the majority of the destinations that we feature, we will have some tours that are more off the beaten track, should you wish. That Peggy's Cove tour of Halifax being one of them. So you've got some time in Halifax, then Montreal, Quebec, Toronto, 5 nights spread across those cities. And as I mentioned, when you're in Toronto, you do have a full tour out to Niagara. So a coach will pick you up from your hotel, take you out to Niagara Falls. You'll be able to take a boat out over the falls, as you can see there, get really close to Niagara Falls itself. And you'll have some time to explore the town of Niagara on the water, which is a little village actually just on the outskirts of Niagara, a nice little quaint, charming village. And you have some lunch in one of the hotels that overlooks the falls. So you've got a bird's eye view of the falls while you're having some food. And also then there's a bit of wine tasting at one of the local Canadian vineyards actually. So some Canadian wine, not particularly famous for their wine, Canada, but it's a really nice way to end the day with a bit of wine tasting before hopping back on the coach back to Toronto. So a full day excursion out to Niagara Falls. This picture, of course, taken from helicopter, and there is the option of doing a helicopter tour over Niagara Falls while you're there as well. It doesn't come as part of the holiday. It's about an extra $120 or so, so 80, 90 pounds while you're there. You get 20 minutes in a helicopter above Niagara Falls. So a really nice option if that's something that would take your fancy while you're there. After your time in Toronto, I mentioned it's 3 days on board the VRAL service, which we'll look into a little bit later on. And then it's into the Rocky Mountains. So the train will ride right into the heart of the Rockies, and you'll arrive in that picturesque mountain community of Jasper. Some amazing pine forest national park surrounding Jasper. Look at that mountain scenery as well. That's the typical view you'll have whilst in Jasper for those couple of nights. A really, really great place to stay. You'll also be well, hopefully you'll be able to spot some wildlife, some elk, some moose, maybe even some black bears as well. Jasper very famous for its black bears. All the brown bears and grizzly bears are out in the national parks. It's all cordoned off, so you won't have any danger of running into those. But the black bears, much more tame, much more common around Jasper itself. And if you're lucky, you might get to spot one while you're there. And then you have a tour out to Banff. So you spend 1 night in Banff, but instead of just having a transfer between Jasper and Banff, you have a full day excursion through Banff National Park. You take a real scenic drive out to Banff. You'll ride along the world famous Icefields Parkway. Again, there'll be plenty of wildlife to see there, the pristine lakes that we've got there, breathtaking mountain peaks, again, in the background. And you'll also have the chance to visit the Columbia Icefield, which is one of the, I don't think it is, but one of the largest expanses of ice and snow south of the Arctic. Really incredible scenery there. And you also get to step on board what's known as an ice explorer, which takes you up to the Athabasca Glacier. And then there's a Glacier Skywalk, where you get an unobstructed view on a glass floored platform that gives you views across the valley. We do have a picture a bit later on of the Glacier Skywalk, and believe me, you do need a head for heights if you want to take a walk on it. But if you have, then I can imagine. I've never done it myself. I imagine it's absolutely spectacular. You also have lunch as well at the Columbia Icefields, and you get to visit Lake Louise as well on this particular tour. You don't stay on Lake Louise. We do have a tour a bit later on where you get to stay on Lake Louise. On this particular holiday, you just get to see the lake itself before traveling on to Banff. You'll arrive into Banff into the evening, have a nice evening dinner in Banff, night at the hotel. You have the next day to get to experience the town centre of Banff itself and have a wander around, and then you'll be transferred back to Jasper before picking up the VRAL service over to Vancouver. So we have 2 nights in Vancouver on this particular trip. Vancouver features heavily in the majority of our holidays in Canada. You'll see it feature on most of the ones that we look at today. So we'll touch upon Vancouver as we go. We do include a 24-hour hop-on, hop-off sightseeing tour of Vancouver in all our packages. And in the majority of the larger cities, there will be a hop-on, hop-off tour included, which just it acts as your transport around the city. I know a lot of people like to walk, which is great. I would do as well. But if you're trying to pack a lot in, sometimes having a 24-hour pass to be able just to hop on the bus and go from one side of the city to the other is a nice convenience. So that's included into all our packages. And for those that don't know Vancouver particularly well, Gastown is a very popular district, an area of Vancouver, very famous for its reveling in the city's past, perhaps I should say. It's got a nice quaint charm about it. And Vancouver Island as well. Nice to take a trip out to Vancouver Island, very famous for the boot shark gardens on the island as well, and we can organise that for you whilst you're in Vancouver. So that's our first trip. That's the big trip. That's the extravaganza. If you've got plenty of time on your hands, you're looking maybe a special occasion, you're looking to do a trip across Canada and take in as much as possible. Halifax to Vancouver are Canadian coast to coast. Second holiday we're going to look at today is the Grand Circle of the Canadian Rockies. Slightly shorter trip, this one, at 8 nights and 9 days. And the main difference, apart from it not extending across Canada, but main difference as far as the train journeys go is that on this particular trip, you will use the Rocky Mountaineer to get you into the Rocky Mountains. So this is a grand circle. So it starts in Vancouver and ends in Vancouver. So 1 night in Vancouver to begin, and then 2 days on board the Rocky Mountaineer. One of the differences between the Rocky Mountaineer and the Via Rail service is that there's no sleeping accommodation on board the Rocky Mountaineer. It's just a day service, a luxury day service that takes 2 days, and you stay overnight in a city called Kamloops, which is equidistant between Vancouver and the Rocky Mountains themselves. So 2 nights in Vancouver, 2 days on board the Rocky Mountaineer. We'll have a look at the Rocky Mountaineer in just a moment. And then you have 4 nights in the Rocky Mountains here. 2 nights in Banff, get to see and do everything that we've just mentioned. And you get to stay 1 night on the banks of Lake Louise as well before traveling on to Jasper for a night in Jasper, before then taking the overnight Via Rail service again back to Vancouver. So you can fly in and out of Vancouver on this one. The previous trip, you could fly into Halifax and fly out of Vancouver. The flight costs aren't included in the prices here. These are just the holiday packages and tours within Canada itself. But if you would like us to look at the flights, just to mention this, we can do. We have a relationship with all the main operators, British Airways, Virgin, Air Canada. So we can include the flights for you as well, should you wish. So let's take a look at the Rocky Mountaineer, shall we? The most premier and famous Canadian train, perhaps the most famous train in North America, and definitely the most luxurious. It definitely has a impeccable service level. So that morning, you'll make your way to the Rocky Mountaineer train station. It has its own train station that was built just for the Rocky Mountaineer on the outskirts of Vancouver. 5-star service from the moment you arrive. You'll have your luggage taken as soon as you arrive. They'll take it away and put it onto the train for you, so you don't need to worry about it until you arrive at your hotel in Kamloops that evening. There'll be a pianist in the atrium, some welcome drinks. They'll give you a nice speech, and then they literally will roll out a red carpet as you board the train. It's a very, very relaxed and casual atmosphere on the Rocky Mountaineer, different from, shall we say, the Venice Simplon Orient Express, which is a bit more formal. You have to dress up for the evening in your suit and your cocktail dress. For the Rocky Mountaineer, very casual, very informal. So you don't need to worry about dressing up at all. Very casual and nice and inclusive. You get to meet all the other fellow travelers if you wish. If you want to be a bit more solitary, you can be, but it's very much a communal affair on board the Rocky Mountaineer. And of course, you're going to have 2 days of spectacular scenery as you travel out of Vancouver and through into the Rockies, pine forests, sweeping lakes, waterfalls as well. Very famous waterfall called the Pyramid Falls, which you'll see en route, and all the mountains of the Rockies, the most famous being Mount Robson, one of the tallest mountains, the highest mountains in the Rockies. Within each carriage, there'll be 4 or 5 attendants, all extremely knowledgeable. They'll talk to you about the history of the area, the wildlife, the culture, the food that you'll be experiencing on board. As I say, extremely knowledgeable, very witty. They're all raconteurs. They've been doing the job a long time, take it very, very passionately. So a really, really impeccable service, first class 5-star service on board the Rocky Mountaineer for those 2 days. There are 2 levels of service, 2 class levels, Silverleaf and Goldleaf on the Rocky Mountaineer. Silverleaf is the first one we'll look at here. So all the coaches in Silverleaf and on board or throughout the Rocky Mountaineer have these panoramic windows to give you that unobstructed view of the landscapes. You have breakfast and lunch served to your seat on board. Dinner you'll have in the evening when you arrive in Kamloops and when you arrive into the Rocky Mountains. So you don't have dinner on board, but you do have breakfast and lunch. As I say, all the food freshly prepared on board and served to you at your seat. You have a glass of wine with lunch and a welcome toast when you arrive. But alcohol isn't included throughout on Silverleaf. If you do want additional alcohol outside of meals, you do have to purchase that. And the Silverleaf is a single decker carriage. If you upgrade to the Goldleaf, you get these huge panoramic, larger windows, as you can see, and it's actually a double decker carriage. So you have a slightly higher vantage point, and your food is actually served on the lower level in a restaurant car. So one of the main differences is you'll spend most of your time on the top deck, but then when you go down for breakfast, go down for lunch, you will have a restaurant car there, and it is an a la carte menu, which is different to the Silverleaf, where you just get served a meal. Obviously, they take into account vegan, vegetarian, and such, but it is just one meal. In Goldleaf, you have a la carte menu, selection of 4 or 5 different dishes, 3-course meal, a wine list as well. So the eating experience is slightly different, a bit more upmarket on the Goldleaf. All your alcohol is also included in Goldleaf as well. And this open air vestibule that you saw just a moment ago, this is only available to Gold class passengers. So if you want the unobstructed views, photographs without the glare of the windows, I suppose, then the Goldleaf is the opportunity for that. With these open air vestibules that they have. Both are classed as luxury. The Goldleaf is just the premier luxury, I suppose. It's about £500 per person. I'm sure that's the question on everyone's lips. About £500 per person to upgrade on the Rocky Mountaineer from Silverleaf to Goldleaf. And here's a picture of the restaurant car in the Goldleaf carriages. You can see some of the food there. Looks like some freshly prepared salmon, I think, that someone's about to tuck into. So as I say, the food is very much fine dining on board Goldleaf. Just to quickly touch upon Kamloops, you'll arrive into Kamloops in the evening on that first day. You'll be transferred from the Rocky Mountaineer train directly to your hotel, where your luggage will be waiting in your room for you. So it's a 5-star service throughout. You'll just have the evening in Kamloops, but there's some fantastic scenery, as you can see there, to be witnessed. Nice park area. Sometimes they have some live music of an evening if it's in the summer, and plenty of restaurants in the city centre for you to get some food before heading back to the hotel that evening. And then the next morning, you'll be back off on the Rocky Mountaineer at about 7:30. Again, you'll be picked up from your hotel, and luggage will be transferred back onto the train. Just like the previous holiday we looked at, you will spend some time in Banff. You'll have the opportunity to, if you wish, do the Glacier Walk. You'll get out to the Icefields Parkway and such. We also include, because you've got a bit more time in Banff itself, we also include what's known as the Banff Gondola, which is this big cable car that takes you right up to the top of Sulphur Mountain, right to the summit, and you'll have a fantastic bird's eye view of Banff National Park and the Canadian Rockies. So we do include that as standard as part of this particular trip. That's not included on the previous one. You haven't quite got enough time in Banff itself to do that. But on this one, we do include the gondola tour up to the top of Sulphur Mountain. As I mentioned earlier, you also get to stay on Lake Louise, and you will stay at the iconic Fairmont Hotel right on the banks of Lake Louise. So this holiday is a bit more luxurious than the previous one. Previous one is you pack a bit more in, a bit longer, 17 days. This one, a 9-day trip, but you do get the Rocky Mountaineer. You get the 5-star Fairmont experience on Lake Louise itself. The Fairmont is the only hotel on the banks of Lake Louise. There are some other hotels down in the town, about a 15-minute drive, but of course they don't give you these amazing views over the lake. As you can imagine, the rooms at the Fairmont do sell out rather quickly. So if it is something that's on your wish list and you would like to stay in Lake Louise, if you're thinking of traveling to Canada, always good to start looking, at least 6 to 9 months, maybe even 12 months in advance if you can, to try and guarantee those rooms, especially in busy periods of the year. But it's a really, really great addition to this trip, is that night in Lake Louise at the Fairmont Hotel. You also have some time in Jasper, as we've already mentioned, and then it's off to Vancouver. And something else that we include in Vancouver is the Capilano suspension bridge. Now, I must admit, I went to Vancouver and I do not have a head for heights, so I could not bring myself to do this. But our customers that do, that aren't a scaredy cat like myself, they say it's absolutely amazing experience. It's the longest suspension, if I can get my words out, suspension bridge in the world, 140 meters long, 70 meters high, and just some incredible views over the national park areas surrounding Vancouver. So if you do have a head for heights, as clearly those two travelers there do, it's something not to be missed, and we do include it in our Vancouver holidays as well. If you don't wish to do that, then like I said, we can switch it out for some other options that we have in Vancouver as well, which our experts will be able to talk you through. But this is a very popular one for those that are not afraid of heights. Okay, so the third trip we'll look at today is kind of a combination of the two we've just seen. It's the Trans-Canada and Rockies adventure with Rocky Mountaineer. So this starts in Toronto. Doesn't start all the way on the west, on the east, excuse me, in Halifax. It doesn't do Halifax, Montreal, Quebec, but does do Toronto. So starts in Toronto with 2 nights there, includes the Niagara Falls day trip, has your 3 nights on board Via Rail, has the 4 nights in the Rocky Mountains, includes Lake Louise, and then has the Rocky Mountaineer from Banff through to Vancouver with that night in Kamloops. So perhaps you haven't got 16, 17 days, but you want a good 2 weeks away, you'd like to do the Rocky Mountaineer, you want to experience Via Rail and the Rocky Mountains. This is a really, really fantastic trip, perhaps the most popular of them all, I would say, because it gives you the opportunity to experience the Canadian train between Toronto and Jasper. It also gives you the chance to experience the Rocky Mountain National Park and to experience the Rocky Mountaineer train itself. So this is 12 nights, 13 days. We haven't really touched upon Toronto just yet. So you do have 2 nights in Toronto here. Toronto, famous for being similar to New York, a kind of a smaller scale New York. But I think it's also nice to point out that it does have some historical areas as well. This photo is taken from Casa Loma, which is a castle located in Midtown Toronto, regarded as a heritage landmark, a treasured landmark of Toronto. Not often spoken about, but something that we like to make people aware of, that it isn't just the city of Toronto that's there. You can get out to some of the wider parks as well. It's famous for having some nice greenery, the green areas as well, Toronto. So 2 nights in Toronto. We also include the 24-hour hop-on, hop-off bus ticket for you as well to get around the city, as we do in Vancouver. Just to talk a little bit more about Lake Louise as well, whilst you're in Lake Louise, it isn't just a hotel that you need to stay in. You can get out on the lake if you wish. If you are a rower or want to go canoeing, you can get out on the lake, experience the freshness of the lake and those incredible pine forest mountain scenery. It's one of the reasons to stay in Lake Louise, I think, as well, is the opportunity to get out on the lake itself. So another real highlight of this particular trip. And I did mention back right at the start, the Glacier Skywalk in Banff. That's included in this particular holiday, and there it is. That is a glass-floored bridge that takes you across from one side to the other over one of the gorges there, and you can get an amazing view of the surrounding area and one of the most famous glaciers in the area. So again, if you've got a head for heights, absolute fantastic experience. If you're like me, probably wouldn't be on top of my list, but there seems to be plenty of people there enjoying it. So again, that's included as part of our package. If that is something, as I mentioned, just with the suspension bridge in Vancouver, that isn't for you, there are other tours available. In Banff, we do have a fantastic lake cruise, a half-day cruise. It's organised by a boat tour company, takes you out onto the biggest lake in Banff, and instead of seeing the glaciers and the mountains and the forests from above, you can get a fantastic view of them from the calmness of the water as well. So we can chop and change our tours to suit you. Don't worry if you look at one and think that just isn't for me. I'm sure we'll have something else that suits. We do also have a holiday that just takes in the cities of Eastern Canada. So the great cities of Eastern Canada by rail. If you just got a week and you're looking to get out to Canada, maybe you've already experienced the Rocky Mountains or the Canadian, the overnight services, the Rocky Mountaineer, or perhaps you'd rather spend your time in the cities and you don't wish to spend time overnight on the train. A lot of people perhaps just prefer to do the day services. We do have, as I say, the 7-night, 8-day trip here, which takes in Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, and Quebec. So it starts in Toronto. Spoken about it a little bit just then, but just to go into a bit more detail on Toronto, the capital of Ontario, of course, it's Canada's major city on Lake Ontario, a real dynamic metropolis, I suppose, a mini New York, soaring skyscrapers, and that iconic CN Tower, which I believe at one stage was the highest freestanding structure in the world. Hasn't been for a long, long time, but I think at one point it may have been. And as I mentioned earlier, lots of green spaces, historical areas. Queen's Park, very famous in Toronto, and also famous for its baseball, the Blue Jays, the Toronto Blue Jays. If you're into your sport and you've got the time and they're playing, no, why not check out a game of baseball while in Toronto? You also get to see Montreal, the largest city in the Quebec province. It's actually set, some of you I'm sure know this, but an island itself in the river, in the St. Lawrence River, and it's actually named after a triple-peaked hill at the heart of the city, which is Mount Royal. So Montreal is named after the mountain Mount Royal. Made up of lots of different neighborhoods, and boroughs, which were all in historically independent cities. Very diverse city. The French colonial areas, of course. Also little bohemian areas, cobblestone areas, which you can see here. Must check out the Gothic Notre Dame Basilica if you're in Montreal, very, very famous. So very cultural, very historic, very diverse, very different, of course, to Toronto. And we also give you some time in Ottawa. Despite being the capital city of Canada, it's often overlooked, home to the government. So we do have a tour that takes you to Parliament Hill, the Prime Minister's residence, the embassies, if you're interested in that type of thing. In Ottawa, just have one night there, and then finishes off in Quebec City. So we do have a full tour of Quebec City included in this particular holiday, where you can learn about the French-Canadian history, explore the ramparts and castles that line Quebec. You'll also get to see the Royal Palace, the old areas of Quebec, and if you can stretch to it, there's one of the most famous hotels in the whole of Canada called Le Chateau Frontenac. It's known as one of the most photographed hotels in the world. Actually, the tour takes you to the hotel. It's so popular. We do offer the hotel as well, but it does come at a bit of an expense, but it's on the tour if you just wish to see it. We also include a dinner in Quebec. Just to mention that throughout these holidays, you only really receive food when you're on the tours. So you'll get lunches on the tours, but the evening meals won't be included. However, in Quebec, very famous for its cuisine, and we do include dinner at a popular local restaurant. So that's our great cities of Eastern Canada, 7-night, 8 days. And the final trip we're going to look at today is our Western USA and Canada holiday. So this is 10 nights, 11 days. Starts on the west coast of the US in San Francisco. So you're going to sample a little bit of the US and one of the most famous Amtrak services as well, the Coast Starlight. So 2 nights in San Francisco, and then a night on the Coast Starlight, probably only second perhaps to the California Zephyr of the most famous trains in the US. Up to Seattle, you arrive in Seattle in the morning, you get 2 nights in Seattle and then a day service up to Vancouver. Then it's going to be 1 night on board Via Rail, 2 nights in Jasper, and then that 3-night trip on board the Canadian over to Toronto. So this particular trip doesn't include a huge amount of time in the Rocky Mountains itself. However, of course, as I mentioned right at the start, if you wanted to tailor this, you thought, actually, I'd love to see a bit of America and Canada, but I'd also like to add on the Rocky Mountains. We can add in time in Lake Louise. We can add time in Banff. We could even add in the Rocky Mountaineer between Vancouver and Jasper, or Vancouver and Banff, if you wish, and substitute out the Via Rail service. So it can be chopped and changed to fit your liking. This one, though, just has that overnight train to Jasper, 2 nights in Jasper, and then straight through to Toronto. So starts with 2 nights in San Francisco, the city by the bay, as it's famously known. Again, as you'll be getting used to, we do have a hop-on, hop-off pass to get you around the city. Takes you to most of the popular locations: Fisherman's Wharf, Golden Gate Park. Get to see the Golden Gate Bridge, of course. One of my recommendations, though, if you are a cyclist and you're active, is to hire bicycles to get around San Francisco. You can actually cycle across the Golden Gate Bridge. Fantastic way to appreciate the Golden Gate Bridge and Golden Gate Bay. And you can cycle across to the little area called Sausalito, where you can have a nice bit of lunch before coming back. Perhaps later that evening on your bikes back into San Francisco. Something I did while I was there, thought it was great. Little tip for you, perhaps. Really nice way to get around. They've also got the tram service, of course, in San Francisco. Bit of a European feel to San Francisco, many say, and a fantastic city to spend a couple of nights. If you wanted to extend your stay in San Francisco or in any of these destinations, of course you can do. If you wanted 3 or 4 days in San Francisco, you could extend it to 4 nights, whatever you please. So after your time in San Francisco, it's on board the Coast Starlight. Starts by kind of winding around the shorelines of the west coast of the US before heading up to the northwest and taking in those amazing northwestern landscapes with the rocky gorges, stony rivers, again more pine forests, hills, mountains as you travel through Oregon and Washington. It really is, a sightseeing experience in itself. So not only are you going to experience the Rocky Mountains, the Via Rail service, travel the provinces, you're going to experience some incredible scenery on board the Coast Starlight as well on this particular holiday. That's going to be, say, 1 night on board, and then you'll arrive into Seattle. There'll be 2 nights in Seattle, famous there for the iconic Space Needle that we can see. Also very famous for Pike Place Market, which some of you will be familiar with. I'm sure one of the most famous farmers markets in the world. Not just fresh produce, but lots of street performers there. You can do treasure hunts for antiques. They have a daily party at the fish market. So something I would highly recommend doing if you're in Seattle is visiting Pike Place Market. And again, we have a hop-on, hop-off pass. So you can tour the city and get to all the popular landmarks at ease. Also Vancouver, another activity or excursion or tour that we offer in Vancouver is the Vancouver Lookout. You can go up to the top of one of the highest buildings in Vancouver by night and look out over the city. So that's included in some of our packages, as is an option to experience CN Tower in Toronto. So just another couple of options in those 2 famous cities there. So that's our Western USA and Canada coast to coast holiday there. And that concludes the trips that we're going to look at today. But I did want to finish by, as I promised earlier, taking you through some of the different levels of accommodation on board Via Rail and taking a look at the Via Rail service itself in a bit more detail. So, of course, the first level of seating and you could call it accommodation because you can spend a night in economy, is the economy service itself. So for all your day trips, we would highly recommend economy. Of course, as soon as you upgrade to as soon as you are traveling overnight on any of the services, we do recommend that you upgrade to one of the sleeper berths or the private cabins on board the trains. You don't have to. If you wanted to keep the cost down, you can travel in economy, especially if it's just maybe the 1 overnight journey between Vancouver and Jasper. The chairs, they may not look it there, they do recline on the Canadian services. You can get a reasonable night's sleep there. You just don't have the privacy, of course, and none of your meals are included. So actually some of the additional expense is taken up by the fact that you get your breakfast, your lunch and your dinner on board as soon as you upgrade. So just to give you an idea, you can spend the night in economy, and if you wish to, we'll happily arrange that for you. But as soon as you do take one of those overnight journeys, the most popular option is to upgrade to the cabins for 2. So these are private rooms, either cabins for two or cabin for one. We do have plenty of solo travelers that take our holidays as well. So each cabin features 2 armchairs, has a small closet there for you as well. Your luggage can be put in the hold for a few days, and you can just take on clothes for the 2 days that you're going to be on board the train. So there is a small closet and a cupboard for you to store your luggage just for the 2 days and 3 nights that you're on board the train. There's also toilet facilities and a sink in your cabin, but no shower facilities actually in the cabin. You have the privacy of a cabin, but there are shared shower facilities between the carriage, which is usually shared by around 5 or 6 cabins. So as I say, this is the most popular. By night, those seats will fold down to form a bunk at the bottom. A bunk will pull down at the top as well, and you'll have 2 comfortable bunk beds for the evening. And you've got that lovely picture window that you can see, which when you wake up in the morning, you'll have some fantastic views. You've also got attendants, continuously walking around the train. They'll knock for you 3 or 4 times a day, bring you tea, coffee, juices, water, biscuits, little snacks as well. They try and make sure that you're as comfortable and as informed as you can be. They'll obviously notify you when it's time for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and there's usually 2 or 3 sittings for each meal, and you can decide which one you'd like. So really nice experience. The most popular option when you're taking the sleeper is the cabin for 2. If you are looking for that bit of luxury, though, Via Rail does offer what's called the Prestige bedroom. It is the most exclusive way to travel across Canada. There are only 6 sleeper cabins, 6 Prestige cabins on each train. As you can imagine, they do sell out pretty quickly. They're around 50% larger than the cabin for 2 that we just saw, and it is the only option for a double bed on any of the overnight trains in Canada. As you can see, perfectly positioned there. So you're facing that picture window when you wake up in the morning. By day, the bed folds up, and there's an L-shaped couch, so you've got a nice kind of lounge area. You do also have a private washroom and shower in the Prestige. So it's the only way to get a double bed. It's also the only way to get a private shower as well. There's a flat screen TV, a mini bar, heated floors and walls, I think, as well, to make it as comfortable as possible for you. You also have a personalized service from the Prestige concierge team, and you have exclusive access with the other Prestige travelers to the Prestige observation car. So this is exclusive to the 6 cabins, 6 Prestige cabins on board. You also have exclusive access to your own bar as well in that same area. So as I say, it is a bit more luxurious, a bit more exclusive. It does come at relatively hefty price point. It's about £1,000 minimum per person more to upgrade to the Prestige. That does depend on the time of year. It does depend on the number of cabins available as well. It is a supply and demand basis that they work on, so their prices do increase on Via Rail, perhaps as they start to sell out. So again, it's always good to start planning these in advance, especially if you're looking for more of those luxury trips. If you're not going to upgrade to Prestige, don't worry, you still get some fantastic views on Via Rail from the dome car. So they do have an observation dome car that's accessible for anybody that's in sleeping accommodation. So as soon as you upgrade to one of those cabins for 2, you do have access to the Via Rail dome car. I have traveled between Toronto and Jasper. I spent a lot of my time in the dome car with a nice book, a glass of wine, just watching the world go by, especially as you come in and out of the Rocky Mountains. It's the perfect place to be to experience those incredible landscapes and scenery. And you'll find that most people will spend a lot of their time in the observation dome car on these Via Rail services. Just to quickly and finally touch upon the onboard dining. So all the Via Rail trains have their own restaurant cars. All the food on Via Rail is prepared on board. It is all locally sourced, fresh produce. The food really is fantastic. I was pleasantly surprised at how good the food was on board Via Rail. We've got a picture here of looks like it's lamb and roast potatoes perhaps there, and some veg. It's a really, really nice service. It's an a la carte menu again, vegetarian, vegan, pescatarian, meat dishes. They'll have everything for you. 3-course meals for lunch and dinner, glass of wine provided as well, bread, as you can see there. Really, really nice service, really nice way as well to meet your fellow passengers. A lot of the tables are for four, so if you're traveling solo or as a couple, you probably have a chance on the different evenings to meet some of your other passengers, the other travelers as well. As I say, a real nice communal affair, and one of the plus points of traveling by train, I think, is that you get to socialize and meet some other guests, learn about their stories and where they're traveling to. So a real high point, I think, of VRL is the onboard dining experience. Okay, so I know we've covered quite a bit there, thrown a lot at you. Hopefully it gave you a bit of inspiration, a few ideas. However, if, as I mentioned right at the start, if it wasn't something that really caught your eye, then don't hesitate to download one of our brochures or take a look on the website just to see what else we have to offer. And if there is anything I didn't cover, don't hesitate to ask me a couple of questions now. We'll take a few minutes at the end just to field any questions that you might have. I'll pop myself on mute, which I'm sure you'll be quite happy to hear. Yeah. I'll give you a couple of minutes without my voice, and then I'll pop back and see if there's anything extra that I can do for you before we finish up. Okay, thanks everyone. We have had a couple of questions come in, so thank you for everybody that posted a question. First one came in from Andrew. Thanks for your question, Andrew, who asked, is it possible to link up rail services between Canada and the US? Brother living in Vermont might want to travel down from Montreal if that's possible. Absolutely, as long as there are rail links that line up, then we can book those for you. I'd have to look at the easiest way. Of course, we'd have to look at how feasible it would be to get you between the two. There aren't a huge number of rail links between the US and Canada. And in the US itself, there aren't a huge number of rail lines. But we would be able to look into it and investigate and see what the best route would be for you to make that trip. Absolutely. And as we saw on the Western USA and Canada one, we can link up Amtrak via rail, no problem at all. So absolutely, that'd probably be a question that we'd have to investigate, Andrew. I mean, I could always get one of our agents to give you a call, or feel free to call in and ask that question, and we could start having a look into it for you. No problem at all. I don't know off the top of my head the very best route for that, but definitely something we'd be happy to look into for you. Leslie's asked, can you get the meals delivered to your cabin? I don't think you can, Leslie. Not in the past, whether or not they changed that for COVID. It's a good question. My honest answer is I don't think you can. No, I think you have to eat in the dining car. I don't think they bring meals to your cabin for you. No, I'm 99% sure of that. It's not something I didn't hear a change on the way that the meals were served. I don't think that there is the option to have it in the room. No, I do think you have to eat in the dining car. But good question. Someone's asked the difference between Railbookers, Rocky Mountaineer, and Via Rail. That was from that was from Leslie. So Railbookers, we're the company. We're the tour operator that arranges the holidays for you. The Rocky Mountaineer is a luxury private rail service that we book on your behalf for you, and Via Rail is the state-owned Canadian service. Via Rail and Rocky Mountaineer are very much different trains. The Rocky Mountaineers see more of a luxury service, although if you were to upgrade to the prestige cabins on board Via Rail, that would very much be seen as a luxury service as well. The Via Rail services can be just commuter trains as well around Eastern Canada, whereas the Rocky Mountaineer is very much a luxury tourist service. But Railbookers isn't a rail service. Railbookers, that's us. We are the company that provide the holiday and book the Rocky Mountaineer trains and the Via Rail services for you, which are two independent rail providers. So hopefully that answers your question there, Leslie. And Leslie's asked a couple more questions actually. The trips are they customizable? They are. Absolutely. So they can start in a different city. One thing I would say about Canada is these trains don't necessarily run every day, especially that Canadian service that goes between Toronto and the Rocky Mountains through to Vancouver. That only operates 2, maximum of 3 times a week in busy season. So you can start these trips from anywhere. If you wanted to extend the nights, then you would have to extend them to fit in with the rail services. But you absolutely, to answer your question, you can start in any destination. If one of our holidays started in Vancouver, but you wish to do it in reverse and start in Toronto, we could look at that for you. No problem at all. A lot of people actually carry on after their trip in the Rockies to Calgary and then fly out of Calgary. So they'll spend a couple of nights in Vancouver, maybe do the Rocky Mountaineer to Banff, spend some time in the national parks, travel on to Calgary for a night, finish in Calgary, and then fly back from Calgary. So we can cater for yourselves whatever fits your needs. And what we will do is if you ask us about potential modifications to a trip, but it doesn't really seem to work, or we feel like that's probably not the best route, we will use our expertise and be honest and say, you can do that, but it would be our advice and our recommendation would be to do it this way, because this is how you're going to make the most of your time. This is the most cost-effective way to do it. So we'll definitely listen to what you'd like to do, but if we feel like there's a better option for you based on our expertise, we'll always be on hand to kind of offer that information up to you. That's one of the reasons I think people come to us, is because we have that expert knowledge and we can try and give you the best information possible. So I'm just wondering see if there's, I think that was pretty much it, or is there one more? The best time of year to travel. Yes, from Gillian. Thanks ever so much. So I would say September, October time, just after summer. Still good temperature, not too hot, but the colors start to change. Full foliage, they call it out there. So that's a fantastic time of year to travel to Canada. Mid-September, late September into October. Yeah, really, that'd be my recommendation. I was there in that time. It was absolutely beautiful, really spectacular. So, it's not as busy actually that time of year. The temperatures have cooled a bit, but they're still warm enough for you not to be too cold, and you get some beautiful changing colors and scenery that time of year. So that would be my recommendation. Okay, great. Well, that seems to be all, I think, most of the questions. Sorry if I missed any. We've had quite a lot come through. If we have, I'll make sure that we reach out to you to answer any of your questions. But I do thank you all for your time today. I do hope that you had an enjoyable experience. Sorry to have kept you for an hour from your day, but hopefully you enjoyed it. And hopefully we'll see you again. If you do have any further questions, don't hesitate to get in touch. But for now, I wish you all the best. Stay safe. Have a great day, everybody. Take care now. Bye-bye.